Hello everyone and welcome to part 5 of Let's Design a Trading Card Game. I just wanted to give a little update on my art progress. I've got a few pages here of just various drawings that I've done for the card art. Just trying to get a feel for what I'm looking for. And today I wanted to discuss kind of the three main aspects that a lot of card games have. Go back to this page. So, in kind of my studies and research of all these different games that I've really liked to play, I kind of found that card games are a sort of balance between hand, field, and life. And certain games have different examples of this, like for example, for life you can either have like a numerical number like Magic does, or you can have some type of card denoting your life like Pokemon does with the prize cards. But they both serve a similar purpose, so they both fall under the same category. And so once you have your theme down for your card game, the next step is kind of deciding how you want each of these three fields to interact with each other and what specific rules you want for them. So for hand, you kind of can think of that as like your options each turn, and your tempo, and your agency each turn, and your resources. So trying to narrow all that down, that you have, how many cards you can play each turn, how many effects you can get off, something like that is kind of how you look at hand as a resource. Some games have mana systems where each turn you get a +1 to your mana pool, and each turn you're trying to utilize the mana as best as you can, which usually means using it because each turn it's renewed. Other games have non-renewable resources, where once you use the resource it's gone, so you can kind of stockpile it and wait for something bigger. There's also games where there isn't much of a resource at all, or resources are only limited to certain effects. And when you're trying to decide what you want for your game, you just have to make sure that the pace works well, because like if you say I just want to make a game where I can play anything I want, and turn one you can just like throw down your whole hand, you're gonna have to implement something in the game to keep the game going after that. So like Rush Duel is a good example of that, where you can play as many units as you want each turn, and the next turn you drop to 5. Flesh and Blood is similar. So if you want a really fast-paced game where you're activating a lot of things each turn, that could be a good route for you. And then if you want more a steady build-up, then the mana system is very popular as well, and you can kind of pick and choose, tweak it a little bit, but basically you want to just look at your options there. Then you want to look at the field, which is linked to the hand. When you're looking at the field, you're specifically kind of looking at pressure, so are you pressing your opponent's cards, or are you pressing their life, and how can you do that, and how often? Summoning Sickness is a good example of a way that kind of controls that to an extent as well. So when you play a card, you can't attack until your next turn, so you have to prepare, and then your opponent knows what's going to be able to attack them at the start of your turn, for example, unless there's some rush keywords in many games that get around that, but for the most part, the Summoning Sickness mechanic is a good way to kind of put the game at more of a back and forth. But then there are other games where you can just play cards and attack with them. and that is also will heavily impact the pace of your game. So you want to look at all of these things together and make sure that you're not creating a game that is broken, in a sense, because it is very easy to do that. And on paper, it's very easy to say, oh yeah, this is going to work perfectly. But then in testing, you're like, oh, well, I have no cards in hand every turn. Or like, oh, I can just OTK my opponent on turn 2 with like my first trial deck, you know. So that kind of ties into life. And we already talked about, you know, numerical versus using cards as life, or like card shields. But another way to look at it is like, how can you defend your life? You know, I keep going back to Magic just because everyone knows it, but you know, in Magic, every unit can block if it's untapped. And then you have other games like One Piece and Card Fight Vanguard, and Dragon Ball Super, where you can guard with cards from your hand, and they have shield values. And then there's Buddy Fight, where there are certain counter cards that can guard for you. So that really opens up your opponent's agency on your turn as well, and that's something to think about. Because there are games like Magic where every action you take, you have to like wait for your opponent and see if they have a response or not. You can either have that throughout the whole turn, you can limit it to just the battle phase, which is usually with guarding, or you can just say, no, on my turn, my opponent will not do anything, just like Pokemon. And all of these are options, and it kind of gets daunting when you're looking at all the possible connections. And this is still only like very wide view. This is a very wide view of each of these topics as well. Like, once you get into it, there's pretty much infinite combinations of little rules and little interactions for your game. It can feel really impossible to make decisions at times, just because you have so many options and you have no real way to know in your head what's going to work or not when you're starting out. You know, I'm sure once you've designed a few games, you probably have a better idea. But if you're just starting out, you just kind of have to wing it. And that would be my suggestion. Just think in your head, I'm going to try this with this. I'm going to try playing as many cards from my hand as I want with Summoning Sickness and drawing back up, and see how that works. Because when you're first starting out, you're just going to be testing a lot, and it takes a long time, and it's tough, but that really is the only way to really hone down on, figure out what exactly is going to work for you and work for what it will excite you as a card designer, because that will be the next step once you've got the rules down. And because I mean, I can't even tell you how many iterations some of these cards have gone through. Like this guy's had like 3+ effects, and you know, he's had like different combat values and different ways he could be played and different ways to play him. You know, he's been all over the place. So that's kind of how I started. I just made this deck with these cards, and then as I tested different rules, I just changed the cards. And as you saw in the other videos, the card layout looks a little different each time, some more than others. But yeah, so today I also just started testing out some new rules as well. So I'm hesitant to set a date to where I'm saying, yes, these rules are final. But I'm hoping I can know it when I see it, you know, because there have been these little things that have bugged me, which I mentioned in other videos, like limiting your play options to 2 per turn. That bugged me. So these current rules, I've gotten rid of that. And the counter ability or the counter mechanic, the way it worked in certain areas bugged me, because I don't have any cards on me, but just pretend you have your Warlord here. With the counter cards, I said you can give your opponent minus power to their attack, which just I like that mechanic for sure, but I don't like it as like the only way to counter. And I had other counters too that would give your units plus health, but I kind of shied away from that for the Warlord because when you have a numerical life system, I've kind of learned that you don't want to be constantly going back and forth with your life, like especially on your opponent's turn. You don't want to be like, oh, counter, get +2 health, oh, -5 health, oh, +2 more health, minus another 6. It just gets a little tedious. So hopefully these new rules work out. I've tested 4 games so far, and so far so good, honestly. So yeah, we'll see. Fingers crossed. Still working on the art too. I'm glad I started to do that because once I get the rules finally down, I can just start get the cards done, you know. And just good luck to everyone doing this with me too. And yeah, I'll talk soon.